All right. Well, hey there, Beacon Church. And as Robert said, my name is Michael, and it is truly an honor to be here with you today. And I mean that sincerely because, as Robert mentioned, our church is just about 4.5 years old. So, in many ways, we look up to you guys. We look up to Beacon as like an older brother that we aspire to be like. And that's why when Robert reached out and asked if I would come guest speak, my first thought was like, really? Like, what happened to all of your other options as you're asking me, man? I mean, I feel like that's the equivalent of asking like the basketball coach of a brand new kindergarten team to go give the Knicks pointers in the playoffs. I'm like, man. So anyway, if today goes terribly wrong, just remember we can blame Pastor Robert. It was his idea. So you guys are in a pretty cool series, I think. It's called Church 101, and you're spending some time talking about who you are and what you do as a church and why all of that matters. And so we're going to spend some time together talking about what I think is one of the most important things that the church does, yet also one of the most difficult things. We're going to spend some time talking about serving one another, serving one another. And to get us started, I want to show you a very old picture now of me and Emily when we just started dating back in 2006. This is proof that I had Justin Bieber hair before he had Justin Bieber hair. Yeah. I am showing you this picture because if you were to travel back in time to this moment and talk to this very swoopy-haired kid and tell him, I've been to the future, and I saw that you and Emily planted a church in Farmingville, I would never have believed you in a million years. I'll tell you why. It's because for most of my life, I have wrestled with something called shame. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because it would just make you probably feel shameful. But if I were to say, hey, raise your hand if you've ever wrestled with shame, I imagine many of us would raise our hand. Here's the unique thing about shame. Shame presents itself in many different ways. So for me, the way that shame often comes up in my life is through feelings of unworthiness and worthlessness. And the reason why I share this with you is because there have been so many times in my life where there have been opportunities for me to serve, opportunities for me to go on a mission trip or to take advantage of something that's happening within my church, and my shame would hold me back because I would think I would love to go on that trip and I would love to help, but I don't think I'm good enough for that. I don't think I know enough Bible verses for that one. I don't think that I could add any value there because I'm just unworthy. And so for many years, my shame kept me from doing what followers of Jesus do. It kept me from doing what the church does, serving one another, serving one another. I wonder if you've ever experienced something like that before. Maybe for you, you can relate to the shame thing. But maybe for you, it's different. Maybe your shame presents itself in other ways. Maybe for you, when you think about serving, getting involved on a volunteer team, or going on a mission trip, or anything like that, serving the community, maybe what holds you back is insecurity, perhaps fear. Maybe something that might hold you back is a hurt. Like you've done this before and you had a bad experience and you're afraid if I do it again, I don't want to get hurt again. It's understandable. Or maybe when you think about serving and jumping on a team, maybe you struggle with what all Long Islanders struggle with. There's just not enough time, right? Just too little time. And all the time that you do have, you got to spend on just surviving here on this island. That makes sense. Or perhaps the thing that holds you back are just the fact that there are so many options, right? Like there are so many other things to be doing, so many other things that you have to do. All the kids' activities and the birthday parties and the sports, but then there's also the beach and there's sleeping in. So I don't know what it might be for you, but I just want you to know, like if you're in the room or if you're watching and you've had that experience where it's like, I want to do this. I know it's good to serve other people. It's just I'm being held back by certain things. I want you to know that that's understandable. It's reasonable, and you're certainly not alone. I mean, you are surrounded by an island full of people who get it, who understand the challenge that these obstacles present. And actually, I think even our Heavenly Father can relate to this. In fact, I want to drop us into a moment that Jesus had where I think he experienced all five of these obstacles all at once. And yet he models the way forward for us for what to do. You see, this moment is recorded for us by a man named John, who spent many years following Jesus. And luckily for us, he wrote down a lot of his experiences in what we call the Gospel of John. And so on the last night of Jesus's life, before his resurrection, right before he's going to get arrested and crucified, John is sitting next to Jesus around the dinner table, and he records for us what happens. And here's what John says in the Gospel of John, chapter 13. It says, before the Passover celebration, before we actually sit down to have dinner and celebrate Passover, Jesus knew something. He knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He had loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. So Jesus is very aware that this is the final countdown. Right? I've only got hours left on this planet. If ever there was a moment in time where it would have been perfectly reasonable for somebody to use the excuse, I just don't have enough time, it would have been this moment. Literally, Jesus was like, I can count the minutes that I have left. Nobody would have blamed him for being a little selfish, for deciding, you know what, send that back. I don't want to eat that tonight. Give me something else. It's his final meal. He could have played the I don't have enough time card. He didn't just know that his time was coming to an end. He knew what he was going to have to endure as well. He knew the beating that he was going to have to take, and the beard being pulled out, the punching, the spitting, the whipping, the having to carry his own cross to his death. He knew that was all going to happen too, which would put him in a state of, the potential for insecurity, the potential for fear is all right there. He's experiencing those obstacles in his, humanity as well. But then John goes on to tell us that there's more that happened. He tells us it was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. So not only is he bumping up against the fact that he's got very little time, he's got the potential for all this fear and insecurity just kind of take over in his last hours, but now he's also dealing with the pain of one of his closest friends betraying him. Could you imagine that? It's because of the betrayal of Judas that Jesus is going to die. That must have been a heavy weight to carry, significant hurt to process. But that wasn't all. John continues to say there was something else Jesus knew. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God and would return to God. In other words, Jesus knew that he was fully man, but he was also fully God, which means he had lots of options because he had authority over heaven and earth, authority over all time, space, and matter. He could do whatever he wanted in this moment. So on Jesus' final night, he bumps up against 5 huge obstacles that I think most of us bump up against, especially when it comes to serving others. Insecurity, fear, hurt, too little time, too many options. Just for fun, I want to do a quick thought experiment with you. You don't have to answer out loud, but I want to ask you a question and just kind of play along and imagine for a minute with me. Let's talk about the too many options thing, right? If you knew, this is a question I want to ask, if you knew that it was your last night on this planet and like Jesus, you had authority over everything, I wonder what you would do. If you knew that it was the final countdown and you could literally do anything that you wanted to do, there's no limitations, what would you do on your final night on this planet? I'll just give you a couple of examples of things that I think I would go for. This first one is going to make probably most of you lose all respect for me, and that's okay. This next one, but for some of you, you might respect me even more. I'm that crazy guy that my dog is my child. I love my golden doodle so much. His name is Amigo. He goes everywhere with me. If I had authority, all authority over everything, the first thing I would do is I would give my dog the ability to speak English, and I would just have some conversations with my dog. I just want to know what he's thinking. He just intrigues me so much, and I want to tell me what you're thinking, man. I'd also snap my fingers and give myself an Iron Man suit, and nobody's touching me. I am Iron Man. Well, why did Jesus didn't think of that? Something else, I would bring together all my closest friends and family, and of course my dog, and my wife should probably be there too. We would all be together. give us the ability to fly like Superman so we can have that experience. We'd go to my favorite restaurant. Then I would ride a roller coaster because for whatever reason, I hit 25 and my stomach could not handle roller coasters anymore. But I got authority over everything, so we're going to enjoy some roller coasters and probably a bunch of other things. But what would you do? Your final night on the planet, you have authority over time, space, and you can literally time travel if you want to. You can travel in space. What would you do? You want to know what Jesus did? With every reason to play I'm too afraid. I don't think I have what it takes. I've just been too hurt. There is no time. There's just no time in my schedule. I got too many other things going on. With every reason to play those cards. And with all authority in heaven and on earth, here's what Jesus does. This is fascinating. He got up from the table, took off his robe. He wrapped a towel around his waist. He poured water into a basin. And then he began to wash the disciples' feet. He served. He served them. And look, I don't want to be gross, but I really do want us to understand and comprehend the magnitude of the situation right now. So I just got to say it. These are not 21st century feet that have been in clean socks walking on like Dr. Scholl's gel soles all day. He's washing first century feet here. Guys who don't have cars, who primarily walk everywhere on first century dirt roads and first century sandals. There's layers. This is a big task. There's 12 of these guys with layers of grime. The smell. Again, I don't want to be gross, but it's a big job and it's horrifying and putrid. Yet, despite the fact that Jesus had every reason not to serve others, not serving others was just not an option for him. Not even in his final moments on this planet. It just wasn't an option for him. Literally, he prioritized his whole life around serving and adding value to people and helping others. Everything else was kind of secondary to that, even in his final moments when nobody would have blamed him for being selfish. So, I got to ask a little bit of a hard question. Be honest with yourself here. Don't answer out loud. Just think about this. Sit with this for a second. In light of all this, are you doing this? Are you following Jesus' lead when it comes to serving others? Because this is Church 101. This is what we do as a church. We follow Jesus. Are you prioritizing serving others? And I'm not talking about the people you have to serve, right? Like kids and spouse and employees and boss. I'm talking about serving your church family. I'm talking about serving your community, going above and beyond. Are you following Jesus' lead? And look, I don't ask this to make you feel guilty or to pressure you in any way. I ask this because, well, this is what Jesus would do. And Jesus would insert himself into all sorts of situations, and he would just ask a really great question to help people kind of come to terms with themselves, with what their next step should be on their faith journey. And so, are you following Jesus' lead when it comes to serving others? And here's why this is so important as the church. Because one day Jesus made the prediction that I will build my church. Jesus once said, I will build my church. The church doesn't belong to Pastor Robert. It doesn't belong to Michael and Emily. It doesn't belong to the Pope. It belongs to God. But here's what's so important to note about this is that the very first time that Jesus uses the word church in the New Testament, he uses this really cool Greek word. If you do all the nerdy work of looking into the original language, he uses this word here. Can anybody pronounce it? Come on, Beacon Church. Can anybody pronounce that? I knew that some of you guys could. I knew that you could. You guys are amazing. Ecclesia uses the word ecclesia. It says, I will build my ecclesia. And let me tell you what ecclesia does not mean. It doesn't mean a building. It does not mean a service time, and it doesn't mean a religious activity. The word ecclesia, it just means a gathering of people who are unified around a specific purpose. And the purpose for Jesus, the purpose of all the ecclesias that he would build over the last 2,000 years all over around the world is simple. There's a lot of ways of saying it, but it's essentially to love Jesus, follow Jesus, and help others do the same. I mean, that's essentially why the church exists. Now, here's what's so important about this. What's so important is that the building blocks that God uses to build his ecclesia are not brick and mortar or concrete and sheetrock or stained glass or huge LED walls that are super awesome. The building blocks that God uses to build his ecclesia are you and me. We're the building blocks that he uses to build his community. So are you following his lead? Have you raised your hand and said, "Yes, God, I want to be used by you. Use me to serve others the way you served us." You following Jesus' lead in this? And I know that many of you are, because I see how amazing this community is. I've already seen so many and met so many of you who serve so faithfully, and it's a beautiful thing to see. You are such a role model for churches like us. One day I hope that our church can be like you in this. And I know that communities like Beacon don't happen on accident. They happen because those of you say, "Yes, I want to serve," and you're faithful to do that. But here's something that's noteworthy in this conversation as we kind of wrap this up. Something that I have to remind myself of over and over and over and over again. And for those of us who do this, those of us who take this seriously, when we raise our hand to ask God to use us to build his church, it does not mean that he's finished building us. I've seen this happen too many times. It's happened in my own life too. I just see so many people get so excited about pouring out that they forget to let God pour in. And I'm talking about in environments like this, because our private disciplines are really important, but so is this. So is the time together that we have worshiping God together, learning together, growing in our faith together. So if you get to a point where you're so excited about serving that your whole Sunday becomes all about pouring out and not taking time to get poured into, that I think is the fastest recipe for bitterness and burnout. Again, I've seen that happen so many times. And I think like one of the best ways to combat that, at least in our 21st century model of how we do church around here, is what's known as like the sit one, serve one model, which is fantastic because in a place like Beacon, you can do this so easily. There are multiple services here. And this is just when you decide to prioritize God building you before you let him use you to help build others. So you take a service, I'm sitting in this service and I'm going to connect with God before I go out and start serving, or vice versa. So are you following Jesus's lead? Are you letting him use you to build the church? But are you also continuing to let him build you? So as we close up, I just want to ask 3 questions, and one of these questions is for whoever you are, wherever stage of your faith journey you might be. So because I recognize that there might be some in here, some who are watching who, like, you're not really sure what you think about God or Jesus. Maybe you're just kind of checking things out and exploring. And I can tell you this is a fantastic place to do that, a fantastic community to do that in. And so for you, your best next step on your faith journey might not be to start serving. I think you probably could, but that's probably not your best next step. I think one of your best next steps is to ask yourself the question, well, what's keeping me from following Jesus, and who can I talk to about it? Because before God asks anything from you, like, he gives himself to you. And many of us have experienced that before. I think before God expects you to serve or do anything, he literally came to serve you by giving his life for you and for me. And so if you're not sure what you think about all that and you're still processing that, I think you should ask yourself the question, well, what's keeping me from following Jesus? And there are so many people that are here in this community who would love to have that conversation with you. But if you are a follower of Jesus, but you haven't like stepped in, or it's been a while since you really consistently served, I would love for you to ask yourself this question: what part is God asking me to play in what he's building? Because there's no such thing as a Jesus follower who's not included in the building of the church. It is part of being a Jesus follower. It is what it looks like to be a Jesus follower. So your next step is to figure out, well, what part do you want me to play? You can invite him into that. And then finally, for those of you who are serving, I just want to give you a question to ask that I have to ask all the time. I'm sure Pastor Robert asks this question all the time. And that's simply the question: have I gotten like so busy building that I've stopped letting God build me? I got constantly have to check myself with this. Have I gotten to the point where I have stopped gathering with my community just to look to God and connect with God and love God? Have I gotten to the point where I stopped sitting one and serving one and stopped growing and learning and worshiping with my community? Now, wherever you are on your faith journey, I just want to encourage you to do one thing: to take your next step. And perhaps these questions can help you figure out what that is. But take your next step. Maybe for you, it's taking that first step to follow Jesus, the one who serves. Maybe for you, if you are a follower of Jesus, is to take that next step and find the part that you are meant to play and serve. And maybe for those of you who already serve, it's to take that next step and to just get excited about continuing to be used to build God's church, but to do it in the most healthy way possible, the sit one, serve one way. Because despite all the reasons that we have for not doing this, serving others is really one of the greatest ways that we become like Jesus. And after all, becoming like Jesus is Church 101. All right, let me say a prayer with you. Well, Heavenly Father, I cannot thank you enough for who you are. God, that you are the God who serves, that in your kingdom you do not expect other people to serve you, but God, you came down to our level and served us. I thank you so much. You gave your life for us, and now we can have a relationship with you. And we can experience your peace and your purpose and your joy and all that comes from knowing you and loving you. I pray, God, that right now in this moment, you just kind of help us have the wisdom that we need to know what we need to do next, or to just affirm whatever we are doing. And then, God, would you give us the courage to actually do it? Would you give us the courage to actually take action, to follow your lead? And as we do, I do pray that as we take you seriously, as we trust you, as we follow after you, as we become more like you, that the people in our life would see the story that you're writing in us, and they would be inspired to look to you. And I pray that you would be honored all throughout the way. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Thank you so much. Love you guys.